Please like, share, and subscribe. Wishing you happiness and good luck every day.
Hey everyone, and welcome. So if you're a small business owner, you know what it's like to wear a dozen different hats at once, right? Well, today we're going to crack open a resource that can make that job just a little bit easier. We're jumping into Jane Applegate's 21 great ideas for your small business and pulling out some of the absolute best, most actionable insights you can use right now.
No, really, just think about that for a second. The marketing pro, the finance wizard, the tech guru. Don't you just wish you had them all on speed dial? People who could swoop in and solve your biggest headaches, but without that giant price tag. Yeah, that's a feeling pretty much every entrepreneur knows inside and out.
And you know what? That's exactly what this book promises. Riva Lesinski, who used to be the editorial director at Entrepreneur magazine, just nails it with this quote. This isn't just about feeling inspired, it's about real, practical advice that's going to save you time and money. So let's dive into the first big category of ideas.
All right, first up, sharpening your management strategy. And we're talking about the human element here. This goes way beyond spreadsheets and flowcharts. It's all about the people, your clients, your advisors, your team. Getting this part right, it's the foundation for literally everything else you do.
Okay, let's be honest for a second. Here's a question every single one of us in business needs to ask ourselves. I mean, we've all had them, right? Those clients who just suck up all your time, all your energy. They're just more stress than they're worth. But what if? What if you didn't have to put up with it? What if that wasn't just the cost of doing business?
And that leads to this gem of an idea. It's so simple, but wow, is it powerful. This is basically permission to treat your own sanity and well-being is a key business asset. Because think about it. A problem client doesn't just eat up your time, right? They drain that creative energy you desperately need to actually grow the business. That's why sometimes firing a bad client can be the most profitable move you make all year. Seriously.
Okay, so on the flip side of getting rid of the bad people, you need to bring in the good people. But hey, a formal board of directors, that can be super expensive and honestly a little complicated. So the book has this great idea. Create an informal advisory board. Just a small group of people you trust, mentors, experts, that you can just call up for advice. It's all about getting that C-suite level advice without the C-suite level cost.
All right, so once you've got your people sorted out, it's time to focus on the lifeblood of the business. Mastering your money matters. We're talking cash flow, funding, planning, all of it. This is the engine, and the book is just full of great ideas to keep it humming.
So for any business that's trying to grow, funding is obviously a huge deal. And Jane Applegate points out something really important. Look beyond the standard bank loan. She talks about finding yourself an angel. Now, what's an angel investor? These are basically wealthy people who invest their own cash into startups they believe in, usually for a piece of the company, some equity. And here's the kicker. They don't just bring money. They often bring incredible experience and a whole network of connections to the table.
And this slide really shows you that there's no single right way to get funding. It's not one size fits all. The book lays out these different paths. On one hand, you've got angel investing, where you're trading a slice of your company for cash. On the other, you have things like government-backed loans, where you keep all your ownership, but you've got to navigate all the rules and paperwork. The whole point is figuring out which of these paths makes the most sense for you and your business.
Okay, so you've got your people, you've got your money, but you can't get far these days without leveraging technology. And what's great is this book isn't stuck in the dark ages. It gives you a real roadmap for using the digital tools that are absolutely crucial for growing a business today.
I mean, just look at this list of modern tools for growth. It's got tips for using Twitter and Facebook for your business, how to run things from the cloud, which just means using online software to make everything easier. And it even breaks down the truth about SEO, search engine optimization, so people can actually find you on Google. These aren't just trendy buzzwords. These are real, essential tools you can use to grow.
And that brings us to our last big pillar, innovating products and services. This is the heart of it all, right? The path to long-term growth. Your strategy, your money, your tech, it's all there to support what you actually sell. If you want to stay in the game, you've got to be thinking all the time about how to innovate what you offer.
Now, innovation sounds like a big, scary word, but it doesn't have to be about inventing the next iPhone. It can start somewhere much more personal. Take this idea. Turn your hobby into a successful business. That is so powerful because when you do that, the passion and the expertise are already there. It's an amazing way to create something people will love because you loved it first.
But hey, the book also tells you to think big. So you've got this amazing product. Now what? How do you get it to millions of people? Well, one idea is to partner with a big company for distribution. This move could literally solve your biggest distribution problems overnight. You get to tap into their network and reach a scale that would take you years to build on your own.
So as we bring this all together, it really boils down to these 4 pillars of great ideas. We've touched on smarter strategy and management, focusing on the people. We've talked about better financial tactics to get that funding. We've looked at integrating modern tech to stay ahead of the curve. And finally, that forward-thinking innovation that's going to secure your future.
And that leaves us with the final and maybe the most important question. Look, all these ideas are great, but they're just ideas until you do something with them. So I want you to think about your own business right now. With its own unique challenges and its own strengths, which one of these ideas really jumped out at you? Which one sparked something? What's the one great idea you can take from this and start working on today?
All right, if you're a small business owner, you know this feeling. The constant juggling act, that never-ending to-do list, and that little voice in your head that says, if you stop even for a second, the whole thing might just come crashing down. It's managed chaos, right? So today, we're going to zero in on 2 brilliant, field-tested strategies to help you get a real handle on it all. Okay, so let's just dive right in with a metaphor that I think perfectly captures the life of an entrepreneur. Author Jane Applegate says you're basically a plate spinner at the circus. You get one plate spinning, let's say that's your marketing, and then suddenly you notice the finance plate is starting to wobble. You race over to get that one steady and, oops, now the customer service plate is about to fly off the stick. It's this constant, frantic dash to keep everything from shattering on the floor. Yeah. I'm guessing that hits pretty close to home for a lot of you out there. That feeling of being pulled in a dozen different directions all at once, that's the reality for so many small business owners. It is exhausting. And this, right here, is what we're calling the plate spinner's dilemma. How do you not only keep all the plates spinning, but somehow find a way to add new ones, make them spin faster, and maybe, just maybe, take a breath without the whole show collapsing around you? Well, look, we're not here to just stare at the problem, right? We are digging into the book 201 Great Ideas for Your Small Business to find some real solutions. And the best part? These aren't some abstract academic theories. No, these are battle-tested ideas from other business owners who have been right there in that circus ring with you. Okay, let's jump into the first big idea. And honestly, it's a bold move. It's this. Forget the usual chain of command. The fastest way to get things done is to go straight to the top. This is all about cutting through the noise and maximizing your most precious resource, which is, of course, your time. And this quote just nails the mindset you need to have. The author puts it so bluntly, your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to find the one person who can actually write the check, the one person who can say yes. And if their answer is no, great. You haven't wasted weeks or months in limbo. You just move on to the next opportunity. Immediately. I mean, think about it. Why would you want to navigate this maze of middle managers and different departments and gatekeepers? They can all say no, but usually there's only one person who has the real authority to say yes. Your job is to get in front of that person. Okay, that sounds great in theory, right? But how do you actually pull it off? How do you bypass all those gatekeepers and get on the radar of a super busy executive? Let's break down some seriously practical tactics. First up, let's go a little old school, a handwritten note. It's a physical thing. It stands out in a world where everyone's inbox is overflowing. Second, time your calls strategically. You know, top execs, they're often working longer hours than their assistants. So if you call before 9 a.m. or after 5 p.m., you might just get them directly. And finally, use your network. Don't forget that your neighbor or that old friend from college might just be the connection you need. And if you're thinking, does that stuff actually work? You gotta hear this story from the author. She sent a pitch to a producer at 60 Minutes. Yeah, that's 60 Minutes. Using priority mail. 2 days later, his assistant called. And the incredible part is what the assistant said. She told her, your letter was the only piece of mail on his desk. He read it. Now, they did end up passing on the story, but that's not the point. The point is the message got through directly to the decision maker. But, and this is a big but, you've got to be careful with this strategy. There is a potential downside. So while the boss might absolutely love your idea and give you the green light on the spot, the managers you just went around, well, they might feel a little threatened, maybe a little resentful.
You have to be ready to manage those relationships really carefully and keep your champion at the top in the loop so you don't get sabotaged.
All right, let's shift gears to our second big idea. This one's less about external tactics and more about your own internal compass. It's about who you choose to bring into your circle, who you choose to work with in the first place. And it's so simple, but wow, is it powerful?
This right here is the author's personal motto, and honestly, it's brilliant. Just read that again. It's not just about, difficult clients. It's a physical, visceral test. If someone you work with consistently makes you feel stressed out, anxious, or just plain sick, that is your gut screaming at you that something is wrong. And it just makes so much sense, doesn't it? Life is way too short. As a creator, a founder, an innovator, you simply cannot produce your best, most inspired work if all your energy is being sucked away by toxic relationships. Protecting your own well-being isn't selfish. It's actually a core business strategy. So let's bring these two big ideas together. How do they connect? One is about being surgical and targeted with your efforts on the outside, and the other is about fiercely protecting your energy on the inside. Let's try and distill this down into a really clear takeaway.
Okay, so here's what it all boils down to. First, you have to treat your time like it's your most valuable non-renewable asset. Stop wasting it on people who can't actually help you move forward. Second, focus your precious energy on two groups of people, the decision makers who can say yes and the partners who empower you, not drain you. It's all about setting firm boundaries to protect both your work and your own peace of mind. So I'm going to leave you with a final thought. A question, really. As you go back to spinning all your plates, just take a moment and ask yourself this. Who in my professional life is giving me that headache or that stomachache? And maybe more importantly, what could you and your business achieve if you finally decided to stop working with them? All right, let's dive right in. Today, we are talking about the one thing that is on every single entrepreneur's mind day and night: money. It doesn't matter if you're just sketching out an idea on a napkin or if you're trying to scale to the moon. Getting a handle on your finances is, well, everything. Author Jane Applegate just hits the nail on the head with this one. It's so true, right? This obsession, it's like the soundtrack to running a business. It's always there in the background. But what happens when that quiet background music suddenly becomes a blaring 5-alarm fire? Just look at that number, $91,000. Now imagine finding out you owe that much in federal taxes and it's due in less than 24 hours. This isn't some textbook example. This is a real story that happened to Jane Applegate herself. And boy, is there a lesson in it for all of us. So get this. Applegate is in Las Vegas on a family vacation. The kids are having a blast in an in-room hot tub. Life is good. Then the phone rings. It's her bookkeeper who's crying so hard she can barely get the words out. And the news is a gut punch. That $91,000 tax bill is due tomorrow. As you can imagine, vacation over. The cause? Her CPA had just forgotten to make the required estimated tax payments. It's a brutal reminder that at the end of the day, you, the owner, have to have your eyes on everything, especially the money. That crazy story is the perfect setup for our first big idea. Before you even think about asking someone else for money, you have to master what's already inside your own four walls. You have to get your own house in order. And the best way to do that? You need to give yourself a new job title. Say hello to the PEO, the Profit Enhancement Officer. This great concept comes from a CPA named Barry Schimmel, and it's simple but powerful. It means you, the business owner, need to become a detective inside your own company, constantly searching for clues on how to trim expenses and boost profits. It's a complete mindset shift. And here's why that mindset is so absolutely critical. As Schimmel points out, if you ask most employees what they do, they'll talk about their tasks. They'll talk about their projects. But the word profit, it almost never comes up. As the PEO, your job is to make that connection for everyone. And this isn't just some fancy theory. Check this out. There was a moving company that put on their PEO hats and discovered their own staff was just kind of slow with the invoicing. So they made one simple change. They just sped up the billing process. The result? An extra $1,000 a week in their bank account. Just like that. Or how about this one? A delivery company took a hard look at their pricing. They decided to make a few tiny adjustments, charging a little bit more for mileage here, a little for waiting time there. Most customers didn't even notice. But those little changes added up to an extra $100,000 a year. That is basically free money. Okay, so you've become a PO master. You've tightened the bolts and optimized everything internally. Now you're ready to look for outside investment. But to get anyone to listen, you can't just show up with your hand out. You need a story. You need a pitch. You need a killer business plan. I love this analogy. Think about it. You've got two beggars on a street corner. One is scruffy, messy, and hard to understand. The other is clean, polite, and clear about what they need. Who are you more likely to help? It's the same exact thing with your business plan. A messy, long, typo-filled plan that ignores what the investor cares about, it's going straight into the trash. A clean, sharp, easy-to-read plan, that one gets a serious look. And hey, don't just take my word for it. Here's a little secret from the other side of the table. One venture capitalist put it perfectly. They get buried in these things. If your plan looks like a novel, it's going to the bottom of the pile. Keep it brief, keep it potent. So what actually goes into a killer plan? First off, the executive summary. That's your hook. If you don't grab them there, they're not reading the rest, period. Next, you need the goods, real data, real research that backs up everything you're claiming. Third, you have to spell out why you are a better bet than anyone else out there. And finally, please make sure it's well written. If writing isn't your strong suit, hire someone and use your network to get it in the right hands. But here's the thing, a flawless business plan is only half the equation. You have to remember, you're not just sending a document to an algorithm, you're pitching a human being. And to win them over, you've got to understand what makes them tick. This question from investor Carol Nichols, wow, it really just stops you in your tracks, doesn't it? It's such a powerful gut check. Before you go asking a total stranger for a huge check, you have to have a good answer to this. Who in your life already trusts you enough to back you? That's where investor confidence begins. So let's pull back the curtain. Here's what investors are really thinking about. Yeah, the numbers matter, but they want a story they can believe in. They want to know that other smart people have already bet on you. And most importantly, they're obsessed with the exit. They're constantly thinking, how and when do I get my money back with a huge return? They're not playing for small wins. They're looking for that 10x payday. Now, for a lot of companies out there, especially if you're early on, maybe a little risky, or your idea is just different, a traditional venture capitalist might not be the right fit. So where do you go then? Well, you go looking for an angel. So what exactly is an angel investor? Well, you could think of them as wealthy individuals, usually successful entrepreneurs, who have already been there and done that. They invest their own money into up-and-coming businesses, and they tend to stick to industries they know well and companies that are physically close to them. And understanding the difference between an angel and a VC is just so important. Let's break it down. Angels are often willing to take a chance on younger, riskier, maybe even kind of weird ideas. VCs, on the other hand, are hunting for massive, scalable businesses with a rockstar team and that crystal clear 10x exit plan. Knowing which door to knock on can save you a ton of time and heartache. So you think an angel might be the right path for you? Great. Here's your 4-step action plan. First, you need that killer business plan we talked about. Second, your financial records have to be squeaky clean and current. Third, and this is a non-negotiable, you need at least one real paying customer. You have to prove that someone will actually pay for what you're selling. And finally, you practice your pitch until you could do it in your sleep. We've covered a whole lot of ground today, from becoming a financial detective in your own company to finding the right investor. But you know what? It all comes back to that very first step, putting on that PEO hat. So I'll leave you with this to chew on. What's the very first move you're going to make as your company's profit enhancement officer? Think about it, because that first small change could be your next big win. All right, let's do something fun. We're going to crack open a time capsule and zip all the way back to 2011. Now, 2011, it feels like just yesterday, but in tech years, it's practically ancient history. We're digging up a business playbook from the very dawn of the mobile and social media age. So what on earth can advice that's over a decade old teach us now? Well, I think you're going to be surprised. First, let's just paint a picture of what 2011 was actually like. The iPhone 4 was the coolest new gadget. Instagram was this brand new thing nobody was sure about. And if you owned a business, this wasn't just some new trend. It was like a seismic shift. I mean, the ground was literally moving under your feet, technologically speaking. And to really get a feel for how fast this all happened, get this. Back in 2007, just 4 years earlier, only 11% of Americans were using a smartphone to go online. It was a novelty. You know, not something everyone had to have. But now, watch this. By 2009, just 2 short years later, that number shot up to 38%. It more than tripled. This wasn't a gradual little climb, it was a straight-up explosion. The world was going mobile, and it was happening at a crazy, breathtaking speed. And this right here shows you the result of that explosion. The whole idea of being online 24/7 was becoming the new reality. In less than 10 years, the average time we spent online just about doubled, and that's not even counting email. We weren't just popping onto the internet for a bit anymore, we were starting to live there. Now this is fascinating. This stat shows just how deep these new habits were getting. In 2011, this was considered a pretty shocking piece of data. Today, it might just sound like a Tuesday. It really shows how personal and ingrained this tech was becoming, and fast. So, seriously, put yourself in their shoes for a second. The entire world is changing at lightning speed. The way your customers behave is completely different than it was a year or two ago. So, what do? How in the world do you keep up? This was the question for every single entrepreneur. Okay, so let's get into the advice they were getting. This was the actual playbook from 2011 on how to master these super powerful and, let's be honest, kind of confusing new tools. First up, the big one, Facebook. The most important lesson here, coming from social media expert Mari Smith, was to draw a clear line in the sand. Your personal page, that was for pictures of Aunt Tilly's birthday. But your business fan page, that was your new digital storefront, a place to shout about what was new, different, or special about what you do. It sounds so simple to us now, but for business owners back then, this was a revolutionary idea. And then you had Twitter. Tech evangelist Guy Kawasaki, who has never been one to hold back, put it pretty bluntly. His whole point was that Twitter was immediate, it was free, and it was a direct line to customers. He saw it as a tool so powerful that if you ignored it, well, you're just being foolish. You can feel the pressure businesses were under just from that quote, right? And hey, it wasn't just about selling stuff. The whole world of professional networking was getting a makeover. The author tells this great story about her son, Evan, who was a visual journalist. He just posted his portfolio on LinkedIn. And what happens? Recruiters from Bloomberg find it, they love it, and they hire him. He landed a fantastic job, all because of his new digital resume. And of course, there were the apps. Oh, the apps. This was like the essential 2011 toolkit for being productive. You had apps for sharing files, scheduling meetings, and keeping up with the news. A lot of these names are still around, but back then, this was the absolute cutting edge. But, it wasn't all sunshine and rocket ship growth. The experts back in 2011 were already starting to see the downside to all of this. They were on the front lines, and they had some pretty serious warnings. This quote from a CEO just nails it, doesn't it? That feeling of digital overwhelm. Even for people who were totally tech-savvy, this constant flood of communication was becoming a huge problem. She said she was spending 3 hours a day just on email. Sound familiar to anyone? And new tools? They created brand new problems. Groupon was the hottest thing in 2011. It was this daily deal site that promised to bring you waves of new customers. But for some small businesses, it was a total disaster. You had restaurant owners saying they were actually losing money on these promotions. So what went wrong? Why did it backfire? Well, it came down to 2 big things. First, it made the regular loyal customers, the ones paying full price, feel kind of ripped off. And second, a lot of the new people who came in were just deal chasers. They'd use the coupon and then poof, they were gone, never to be seen again. It was a tough lesson on the difference between getting attention and building loyalty. This might be the most powerful slide of the whole bunch. This advice is from Mari Smith, the Facebook expert we just talked about. Even she, a person whose entire career was built on being online, saw the human cost. The need to just unplug completely was becoming a matter of survival. So we've seen the playbook, we've heard the warnings, now for the big question. Looking back from today, what advice from 2011 is just a relic of the past, and what lessons are actually timeless? Let's start with Guy Kawasaki's most shocking take. In 2011, he actually said that websites were a total waste of time. He argued that all you needed were platforms like Twitter. Now, today, we know that's not exactly right. But what was he really getting at? He was trying to shift the focus away from the tool, the website, and onto the strategy, which was go where your customers are. And this really distills it all down to the things that never change. These principles are just as true today as they were in 2011. First, know your audience and meet them where they are, whether that was Twitter back then or, TikTok now. Second, provide real value. Like Kawasaki said, if all you do is talk about yourself, nobody's going to care. And third, be patient. Building a real community and earning trust takes months, not days. These aren't tech tips. They're the fundamentals of business. And that brings us to our final thought. Looking back at the chaos and excitement of 2011 helps us see our own time a little more clearly. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What absolutely essential, timeless business advice are we ignoring right now just because we're distracted by the latest app, the newest platform, or whatever the next big thing in tech is supposed to be?
Ever wonder how a simple spark of inspiration can turn into a wildly successful business? Well, today, we're going to dig into the stories of everyday people who did just that, turning a personal problem, a passion, or even a travel discovery into a thriving company.
It's easy to think that only huge companies with really deep pockets can actually innovate, that you need this massive research and development department to bring anything new to the world. But honestly, the reality is way, way different.
In fact, get this, in just 1 year, small companies invested around $50 billion in R&D. That just goes to show you that innovation isn't just happening in some fancy corporate high-rise. Nope, it's bubbling up from small, creative, and frankly scrappy entrepreneurs.
And that makes sense, right? Because so often, it just takes 1 or 2 people with a staggeringly great idea to change everything. I mean, think about it. Facebook, Napster, Rolling Stone magazine. They all started small. So today, let's look at the stories behind some of these great ideas and see how you can find and maybe even launch your own.
All right, so let's start with our first big source of inspiration, just a personal problem. It is amazing how often something that's just bothering you can turn into a phenomenal product that helps everybody.
So, this is Dave Chappelle. Back in the late 90s, he was a songwriter, he was a cab driver, and he was completely creatively stuck. I'm talking a terrible case of writer's block. He needed something, anything, to break his slump, so he started playing with words in a very, very unusual way.
So instead of, bringing a bottle of wine to a party, he'd bring a magnetic poetry kit that he made himself. And his friends, they were absolutely mesmerized. They would just stand there in front of his fridge, moving words around. Pretty soon, what started as his own personal tool became a hot product he was selling at local craft fairs. And when I say sales took off, I mean they exploded. Before he knew it, he had 30 people just making these kits in their homes, and he was pulling 90-hour weeks trying to keep the whole thing from flying off the rails. So what's the big lesson we can pull from this crazy growth?
Well, here's his advice, straight from him. You've got to focus on speed and sales first. He says way too many people get paralyzed by the legal stuff, patents and whatnot. But the big companies, they won't even notice you until you're already selling millions. So just get it out there and sell it hard.
Okay, now for our second big theme, how to turn a personal passion, a hobby you truly love, into a real, thriving business. So let's look at the journey of Nordic Needle. It all began when 2 friends, Roz and Sue, wanted to take a class in a really specific type of Norwegian embroidery. Simple enough, right? But they couldn't find the supplies for it anywhere. That one little frustration led them to open a tiny shop, which eventually grew into a massive global business.
And listen, this is not some isolated story. From jewelry design to beading to who knows what else, people all over are proving that even the most niche pastimes can become super profitable businesses, as long as you can find your community.
But sometimes, the big idea isn't about solving a problem or cashing in on a hobby. Sometimes, it's a discovery you make thousands of miles from home.
Let me introduce you to Mara Saber and Lenore Rice. One was a mergers and acquisition specialist, the other a tax attorney. As you can imagine, they got tired of the corporate rat race, and they quit their jobs. But their next big move came from a totally unexpected place.
It's actually pretty simple.
on a trip to Italy, they just stumbled into this tiny village called Impruneta, and they were just completely captivated by this unique, handmade terracotta pottery. It was beautiful, it was authentic, and they immediately saw an opportunity. They decided to take a chance.
And their approach was perfect. Their first investment was pretty small. They spent about $4,000 to get one single pallet of pots shipped to New Jersey. And their logic was genius. If we can't sell them, hey, we'll just have some really beautiful pots for our own gardens. But of course, landscape designers and nurseries absolutely love them. And just like that, a new import business was born.
You know, this whole idea of importing something unique, it isn't new. Way back in 1962, a mom named Frida Kaplan was just looking for some flexible work after her daughter was born. She started a job in the LA produce market and ended up single-handedly changing what Americans eat.
I mean, just look at the massive impact one person's vision can have. In the 60s, produce sections were tiny. It was Frida who introduced us to things we just take for granted now. Kiwi fruit, sugar snap peas, portobello mushrooms. She literally transformed the American grocery store.
So these stories are more than just inspiring, right? They're basically a blueprint. It doesn't matter if your idea comes from a hobby, a personal problem, or a trip abroad. There are clear next steps you can take.
So if your idea is bubbling up from a personal passion, it's really all about connection and research. You got to find your community, whether that's online or in person. Go to trade shows, not just to spy on the competition, but to really understand the market. And you know, the best part is you can start small. You don't have to quit your day job to start seeing if your passion could become a business.
And hey, if you're feeling inspired by that import idea, the key word is trust. You build that trust by starting small. You know, one pallet, a short-term deal. That way you can test the market without a huge risk. Find a professional customs broker to handle the logistics, and then just communicate constantly with your supplier. That is how you build a solid long-term relationship.
At the end of the day, every one of these incredible products, from magnetic words on a fridge to exotic fruits in a grocery store, it all started with a simple observation, a personal passion, and the courage to find an answer. So what problem are you going to solve? What passion will you share?
Hey, welcome. So if you're running a small business, you already know the deal. The biggest challenge isn't having a fantastic product. It's getting anyone to notice you in a world that is just so loud. So let's get right into it. How do you possibly make your voice heard when you don't have a mega corporation's budget? Right? This is the question. It's the one that keeps so many of us entrepreneurs up at night. You've poured your heart and soul into this thing. You've got the passion, you've got the drive, the killer idea. But how do you actually step into the ring with the big players who seem to be absolutely everywhere? And that, right there, is the heart of what we're going to talk about today. You know, successful marketing isn't just about outspending your competition. Nope, it's about outthinking them. It's about being creative, being clever, and finding those little opportunities where other people don't even think to look. Now, our guide for all this is a real classic, A Playbook for Entrepreneurs by Jane Applegate. We are diving headfirst into Chapter 5 to pull out just four, brilliant and super actionable strategies that can seriously help you level the playing field. Okay, first up, we've got a concept that feels like it's straight out of a David and Goliath story. It's all about leveraging the power of a company that is way, way bigger than you. Think about it. Instead of seeing them as the competition, what if you saw them as a potential partner? And you know what? The process is surprisingly straightforward. First, just look at who's already spending money trying to reach your exact audience. Think about the advertisers in your industry magazines. Boom, that's your target list. Then you just do a little digital detective work to find the right person in their marketing department. And finally, and this is key, skip the email that's just going to get deleted. A direct phone call, or get this, even a physical letter, can slice right through all that digital noise. Yeah, it takes guts, but the payoff, it can be absolutely massive. All right, so whether you're partnering up with a giant or you're going it alone, how people see you, that's everything. And this is where small businesses actually have a huge advantage. We're agile. In the digital world, size is really all about perception. I mean, the internet is the ultimate equalizer, right? It allows a one-person shop to look just as polished and professional as some multinational corporation. And this right here, this is basically your checklist for building that perception. And look, it's not about being deceptive. It's just about being professional. High-quality photos, a blog that makes you look like an expert, clear contact info on every page. These are the building blocks of trust. And the real key here is consistency. A fresh, professional, easy-to-use online presence just makes you look established and reliable from the very first click. Ugh, this next strategy is one of my absolute favorites because it's like finding money you didn't even know you had. It's this incredibly powerful tool that so many small retailers just completely overlook: cooperative advertising. So how in the world does this work? Okay, imagine a high-end watchmaker. They want to sell their watches in your town, and you happen to have the perfect little boutique to do it. Well, they will actually help pay for your local ad, as long as their watch is featured in it. So you get this professional ad you probably couldn't afford on your own, and they get direct access to local customers. It's brilliant. And this quote from ad agency CEO Eric Doctorman, it just sums it up perfectly. This isn't a handout, it's a real partnership. The manufacturer is driving customers to your store, and your store is helping to cement the manufacturer's brand in the local market. It is a classic win-win. But of course, there is a catch. The manufacturer needs to know that you're a serious partner. So to get these co-op dollars, you have to commit. You've got to stock enough of their product to actually meet the demand their ads are going to create. It's an investment for sure, but it's one that can pay off with some really big-time exposure. All right, our final idea is all about transforming a moment that we all hate, being put on hold, into a golden marketing opportunity. Seriously. You have a truly captive audience on the other end of that line, so what are you telling them? Just think about that for a second. 45 seconds. That's not dead air, that's a free commercial spot delivered to someone who is already interested in your business. So the only question is, are you using it or are you just wasting it on some terrible hold music? I love this quote. It just completely reframes the whole concept. Your on-hold message is your most reliable employee. It is always on, it's always positive, and it is always delivering the exact message you want it to. So how do you make it great? Well, here are some brilliant ideas. Don't just sell at them. Inform them about a special offer you have going on. Share a cool fact about your industry. Celebrate a team member's success. The absolute key is to keep it fresh and engaging. You're turning wait time into value time. So, as we start to wrap this up, let's pull it all together. What's the one common thread that's weaving through all four of these great ideas? Well, it's definitely not about having the deepest pockets. Ultimately, what all this really shows us is that powerful marketing is, well, it's a mindset. It's about thinking strategically about partnerships, about professional presentation, about finding those hidden resources, and about turning every single customer interaction into a real opportunity. It's proof that creativity and consistency will always, always be cash. And that brings us to the final question, really the only one that matters. Looking at these four strategies, which one sparked an idea for you? What's the one thing you can actually go and do this week to start marketing beyond the obvious?
All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to build the ultimate people playbook for your small business. We're using Jane Applegate's 201 Great Ideas for Your Small Business to break down everything you need to know about hiring and management so you can build a team that really, truly drives your success.
People can make your life magical or miserable. And look, if you run a business, you know this isn't just some nice quote, right? It's your daily reality. The right person can feel like a superpower for your company, but the wrong one, well, that can turn into a total nightmare. Okay, so here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll talk about just how high the stakes are. Then, we'll build your hiring playbook from the ground up. After that, we'll uncover some secrets of the interviews. And finally, we'll get into how to keep your great people great. Ready? Let's dive in.
So, first up, people, magic, or misery. We're about to get real about the high cost of a bad hire and why, according to the author, being picky isn't just a good idea, it's non-negotiable.
You know, this isn't just some abstract concept for the author. She shares her own war stories, and wow, they are something. She learned these lessons the really hard way, dealing with an MBA who, get this, hated the small business world, an office romance that just blew everything up, and even an assistant who is addicted to drugs. It's a pretty powerful reminder that things can go wrong in a big way.
Okay, so after hearing those horror stories, you're probably wondering, how do I avoid that? And that brings us right to Section 2, your hiring playbook. This is all about putting in the work before you even think about posting a job opening.
Well, the very first step, your foundation, is a crystal clear written job description. You see, big companies do this all the time, and the book argues that small businesses need to be even more serious about it. Why? Because in a small team, every single person's role is absolutely critical. This isn't just paperwork. It's the tool that prevents confusion and makes sure everybody knows what winning looks like.
But what if you don't have a giant recruiting budget? No problem. The book lays out 5 really smart, low-cost ways to find good people. First, tell your customers and your vendors they already know and like your business. Ask other small business owners for referrals. Think about hiring students or retired folks, a huge pool of untapped talent. You can advertise in local papers or trade magazines. And don't forget to contact your state employment department. They often have free resources.
All right, you've got some candidates lined up, you're ready for the interview. You think you know what to ask, right? Well, hold on. You need to be super careful here because this is a minefield where a lot of small business owners can get into some serious legal hot water. Seriously, take a look at these questions. Things like, have you ever filed a workers' comp claim? Or how many sick days did you take last year? They sound kind of practical from a business perspective, don't they? But guess what? According to the legal experts in the book, every single one of them is illegal to ask. The big takeaway here is you can only ask questions that are directly about their ability to do the actual job. That's it.
So, with those legal warnings in mind, let's move on. Section 3, Secrets of the Interview. We're going to get some wisdom from a total pro.
And when we say pro, we mean it. The author talked to an executive named Chris Garog. And just to give you an idea who we're talking about, $130 million. That's how much the sale of Napster to Best Buy was worth, and he's the guy who orchestrated it. So yeah, when he talks about hiring, you probably want to listen.
So what's his big secret? What's the #1 thing he looks for? It's not just about what's on a piece of paper. Gorog says, I always like to find someone who really wants the job, someone who is emotionally connected and will just die if they don't get it. He's not just looking for skills, he's looking for passion, real, genuine, emotional investment in what you're doing. So Gorog's whole philosophy can basically be boiled down to this simple checklist. First, did they do their homework on your company? That shows they actually care. Next, look at their resume. Does it show loyalty, or are they just job hopping every 6 months? Huge red flag. Always check references. And try to talk to someone senior, not just HR. And finally, and this is a big one, is the chemistry right? You just got to trust your gut.
All right, so you did it. You found that amazing, passionate candidate. You've checked all the boxes. You're done, right? Not even close. Now comes the really important part. Let's talk about our final section. Keeping your people great, and how to motivate them with more than just a paycheck.
And the key to all of it, according to the book, is something so simple but so often overlooked. Communication. You have to be super clear about what you expect. Why? Because nobody is a mind reader. Whether it's in writing or just regular check-ins, being consistent and clear is everything.
Now, let's bust a huge myth right here. We all tend to think that money is the ultimate motivator, right? Well, the reality, it's just not that simple. Things like feeling genuinely appreciated for your hard work and simply having the right tools to do your job, those are often way more powerful.
And you know what? Showing that appreciation doesn't have to break the bank. We're talking about really simple stuff, like actually calling people by their name. A simple, sincere thanks, great job can go a long way. Or maybe giving a paid day off after someone really busted their hump on a project. It's those little things that build a great culture.
You know, as we start to wrap this up, it really all boils down to one core idea. The author tells a funny story about an executive who said, "Business is great except for the people." And while that's a good line, the real truth is the exact opposite. A successful business is all about the people.
So at the end of the day, this whole playbook, hiring, managing, it's all about finding those people and then helping them be great. Which leaves just one question for you to think about. Who are you going to find to make your business magical?
All right, if you're an entrepreneur, you know the grind is real. It feels like this constant battle to get control over your own time. And honestly, it can be exhausting. So today, we're going to break down some really powerful, practical strategies to not just manage your time, but to truly, finally reclaim it. So let me ask you this. Does this question feel a little too real? You know that feeling of being pulled in a million directions at once, where your whole day is just a series of reactions instead of things you actually plan to do? If you're nodding along, you are not alone. This is the classic time trap that so many of us fall into. And look, this is just the reality for so many founders, right? The long hours are, well, they're often a given.
So the real challenge isn't about trying to work less, it's about making every single one of those minutes count for more.
So let's just call this what it is, the entrepreneur's time trap. It's this vicious cycle of being super busy, but not always productive. But the good news is, it's a cycle we can absolutely break out of.
So here's the secret, and it really boils down to 3 things. See, true work-life balance isn't about magically finding more hours in the day. It's about mastering the hours you already have. And you do that through relentless organization, having crystal clear priorities, and mastering the game-changing art of delegation. Okay, so let's start with that first big piece of the puzzle, which is taming our digital distractions. We've got to manage the biggest time thief in our modern work lives, our own technology.
Let's just call it the electronic tether. It's a perfect description, isn't it? It's that device in your pocket that keeps you connected to everything, but often ends up just strangling your focus and your ability to do any deep, meaningful work.
Now get this. Think about this for a second. Some of the most successful people on the planet, we're talking Warren Buffett, don't even carry a mobile phone. Just let that sink in. It really forces you to ask a tough question. Is being available 24/7 really the key to success?
So how do we manage this tether? Well, it actually comes down to a few simple but really powerful shifts. So instead of playing endless phone tag, you schedule important calls. That way you actually have time to prepare. And instead of letting email interrupt you all day, you treat it like any other task. You check it on a schedule. And you keep your communication professional. A quick text for an address is fine, but for critical business stuff, no way.
And really, this just puts it all into perspective, doesn't it? Unless you're an ER doc, there is absolutely no reason to be online all the time. That expectation of an instant 24/7 response, that's something we created in our work culture, and it's something we have the power to change.
Okay, now for the second big idea, the art of letting go. And for a lot of entrepreneurs, this is the hardest skill to learn, but it is also the most critical. We're talking about mastering delegation.
You know, it helps to understand how we even got into this mess. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when having an assistant was just standard. But then, technology and budget cuts happened, and the expectations shifted. Suddenly, founders were supposed to be their own assistants, their own travel agents, their own schedulers, the whole shebang. This slide lays out the 2 paths so clearly. On the left, you've got the micromanager, wasting everyone's time, peering over shoulders, second-guessing everything. But on the right, you have the effective delegator. They hire help, they set clear deadlines, and they empower their team by trusting them. They don't control, they lead. The real question is, which path are you on right now?
All right, let's move on to our final foundation piece, your foundation for focus. So we've managed our digital world, we've thought about our team, now it's time to build the physical workspace that actually lets us do deep work.
Okay, let's just be real for a second because this is a message a lot of us probably need to hear. This idea that we work better surrounded by chaos, it's a myth. It's a complete myth, and it's one that's costing us a ton of lost time and focus.
Look, if you're not convinced, try this little experiment. For just one day, actually time how long you spend looking for stuff. A document, a file on your computer, that one specific email. I'm telling you, the minutes add up, and you'll be shocked at how high the cost of disorganization really is.
So, where do you start? With a purge. Step 1, take everything off your desk. I mean everything. You need a clean slate. Step 2, be absolutely ruthless with old files. If you haven't touched it in a year, it's probably just clutter. Step 3, tackle that pile of magazines and papers. Tear out the articles you actually want to read and recycle the rest. And finally, step 4, go through that mountain of business cards and toss the ones you know you'll never contact. The goal here is just to get rid of the noise.
Okay, so once you've done the purge, you need a system to keep it that way, right? Remember, your desk is a workspace, not a storage unit. Find tools that actually work for your brain. Maybe it's colored folders like you see here, or a specific app, whatever. Keep your active projects close by and commit to a calendar system you'll actually use every single day.
So we've talked about managing your tech, your team, and your space. And all of these are foundational pieces that lead us to this final, ultimate principle for productivity, the one-task rule.
If you only remember one thing from all of this, let it be this. Your primary job, the single most valuable use of your time, is to focus on the tasks that only you can do. Everything else, every single other thing, has to be delegated, automated, or just plain eliminated. That isn't just a tip.
That is the ultimate secret to reclaiming your time and actually scaling your business.
So here's where you start. Don't try to change everything all at once. Just look at your to-do list for tomorrow and ask yourself this one simple question. What is one thing on this list that someone else could do? Start there. Start reclaiming your time one task at a time.
What if the secret to a really thriving business wasn't about your product at all, but just how you treat people? Today, we're going to break down the ultimate customer service playbook, and it's all inspired by Jane Applegate's fantastic book, 201 Great Ideas for Your Small Business.
Think about it. Every single time a customer deals with you, it's a fork in the road. Down one path, you've got a customer getting a full refund, no questions asked, even without the box. Down the other path, a theme park runs out of drinks on a scorching hot day. One of those builds loyalty for life. The other, well, it pretty much destroys it. And making that choice over and over again, that's what really defines your business.
And this, right here, is where so many businesses get it completely wrong. They think of customer service as some department, tucked away in a corner. But it's not. It is the mission. It has to be the engine driving the entire company. It's your core strategy for actually winning.
And it all really boils down to this one simple sentence. This is the foundation for everything we're about to talk about. If you put people first, the money will follow. Now, that's not just some feel-good, fluffy sentiment, right? It's a hardcore strategic choice. And once you commit to that idea, every single decision you make starts to look different.
Okay, so what does that philosophy actually look like in the real world? Well, our first play comes from a company that basically built an empire on this one idea, the online retailer Zappos.
And hey, if you think this is all just a feel-good strategy and not about the bottom line, well, here's the proof. Zappos focused so relentlessly on service, they became so incredibly valuable that Amazon came along and bought them for over $1 billion. Yeah, that's billion with a B.
So, how do they pull that off? It's all about their core value. See, for Zappos, the shoes, the clothes, all that stuff, that's not the main event. Their real product is the customer experience. Everything else they sell, that's just the inventory they use to deliver that amazing experience. And listen, this isn't just some memo they send out. They live it. Every single employee, I'm talking even the COO, has to do 4 weeks of call center training. The CEO himself gets on the phones during the holidays. You get a full year to return something, and this one is just incredible. If they're out of stock, their reps will actually find the item for you on a competitor's website. I mean, think about that. It's so counterintuitive, but it builds a level of trust that no ad campaign could ever buy. It's not some complicated secret, It's just a deep, company-wide commitment to just being helpful.
All right, so you've got the commitment, but how do you make sure it actually translates to what the customer feels? That brings us to our second play, which is all about perspective. It's about learning to see your own business exactly the way your customers do.
So, let's start with a little gut check, a quick quiz for you. Part 1. Do you really know who your customers are and what they want, or are you just kind of assuming? If you don't have hard data to back that up, you've got a major blind spot.
Okay, part 2 of the quiz. What happens when a customer returns something? Is it treated like an annoying chore for your staff? Or do you see it for what it is, a golden opportunity to fix a problem, earn back that customer's trust, and learn something that'll make your business better?
And last question, part 3. Think about your team. Are they truly empowered to help? I mean, does every single person who talks to a customer have all the info they need right at their fingertips? Because let's be honest, without that knowledge, providing great service is, well, it's pretty much impossible.
So if you're not 100% confident in your answers to those questions, don't worry. There's a really proven way to find out what's actually going on. It's called hiring a mystery shopper.
It's pretty simple, really. These are just regular people you pay to come in and act like a customer. They report back on everything, how your staff greeted them, the way stuff is displayed, how questions and complaints get handled. They're looking at all the little details. And what you get back is a totally unfiltered look at what your customers are really experiencing.
All right, that brings us to our third and final play. And this one is all about mastering the touch points, those small, daily actions that make a huge, huge impact. This is where the big mission stuff becomes reality.
You know, even in this super high-tech world we live in, one of the most powerful and honestly most neglected tools is still the telephone. And there's a consultant, Nancy Friedman, who's actually known as the telephone doctor. She's built her whole career on perfecting this one touch point.
And her advice is just brilliantly simple. First, she says to smile before you even answer the phone. It sounds silly, but it actually changes the tone of your voice. Second, keep important numbers handy, so following up is a breeze. Third, call your own office at random times just to hear what your customers hear. And finally, learn to love voicemail and leave messages that are actually clear and specific. Just these little things can give sales and morale a serious boost, like right away.
Now, what's so fascinating is how that really modern advice connects perfectly to some super timeless wisdom. This comes from a guy named George Cohen, a retailer who got his start selling clothes from a pushcart way back when in New York City.
And here's what he learned after decades of serving thousands and thousands of customers. His core advice boiled down to this one powerful idea: whatever you do, don't make your customer angry. I mean, it sounds almost too obvious, right? But that's the foundation for everything. Just avoid any action that's going to lead to frustration.
So what happens when you put all these plays together? When you combine that wow culture with the true customer's eye view, and you master all those little daily touch points? What you get is a powerful, lasting competitive advantage.
Because here's the big takeaway, the ultimate advantage. When you truly wow a customer, they don't just come back for more. No, they go out and they become your marketing team. They tell their friends, they post about it online, and that word of mouth is so much more powerful than any ad you could ever buy.
So as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with one final question to think about. This doesn't have to be some massive company-wide overhaul. Just based on everything we've talked about, what's one small thing you can change, like today, to create a wow moment for the very next customer you talk to? Have you ever thought about taking your business global? I know. It can sound like this massive, super complicated thing that only giant corporations can pull off. But what if I told you it's less like a corporate takeover and more like an adventure, an expedition that any ambitious small business, yeah, like yours, can actually go on? Okay, let's get into it and see what that journey really looks like.
First things first, let's just get a sense of the landscape. And wow, this quote from Karen Zenz really gives you the view from the summit. Just let those numbers sink in for a second. 70% of the world's purchasing power, 90% of the people on Earth. It's a huge, staggering reminder that there is an immense, untapped world of customers out there just waiting.
So let's start the first leg of our expedition. We're going to talk about the single biggest, most obvious reason to even think about looking beyond your own borders, the absolutely massive scale of the opportunity. Now, this is a really crucial point. Going global isn't a life raft for a struggling company, okay? It's a launch pad for a healthy one. If your business is already strong, if it's growing, and you've got something that people anywhere could love, then this journey is for you. The entire world really can become your marketplace.
You know, every good expedition needs the right gear and a solid plan. And the fantastic news for businesses in the US is that there's basically a base camp full of resources already set up and waiting for you. And get this, most of it is totally free.
These aren't just some boring, faceless agencies. You should think of them as your expert guides, your Sherpas for this climb. The Department of Commerce, the ITA, the SBA, they all have programs specifically built to help small businesses like yours win on the world stage. Seriously, they exist to help you figure this all out. And they've laid out a pretty clear path to get you started. It all begins with free counseling. You get to talk to experts who've done this before. From there, you can actually join a trade mission to meet potential customers face to face. And if you want a really custom approach, there's something called the Gold Key service, which sets up pre-vetted one-on-one appointments for you before you even leave home. And how much does that super tailored Gold Key service cost? $700. I mean, come on. For about that much, a small company can get a personalized schedule of meetings with potential international buyers. That's an incredibly accessible price for what is essentially bespoke business matchmaking. It's kind of a no-brainer. Okay, so you've got your guides, you've got your gear. But listen, every adventure has its challenges, right? So let's talk about some of the real-world obstacles you'll need to watch out for as you start to navigate this new territory. First up, something you might not even think about: communication. What seems totally straightforward at home can get, well, lost in translation. And I'm not just talking about language. Sometimes cultural norms can cause some major misunderstandings. And this right here illustrates the point perfectly. In some cultures,
Being polite means avoiding a direct no. So an American business owner might leave a meeting in Mexico feeling totally pumped, thinking they got a dozen yeses, only to be confused when the orders never actually show up. It's a huge lesson in learning to read between the lines.
All right, next challenge. This one hits you right where it counts, the bottom line. Let's talk about getting paid. Different countries have very different cultures around payment, and what's considered normal in one place could be a serious threat to your cash flow somewhere else.
I mean, this quote makes that risk feel super real, doesn't it? Understanding these local payment customs before you sign a contract is absolutely critical. It can be the difference between a profitable venture and a logistical nightmare.
And finally, one of the most common but easily overlooked traps, just assuming your product will work everywhere exactly as it is. Doing your market research is so important because sometimes the issue is, well, it's incredibly basic.
Can you just imagine the frustration? This guy was all set to launch, so excited, only to find out his products literally wouldn't fit his customers' beds. It's a perfect, almost funny example of why you have to do your homework first.
Okay, so enough with the warnings. Let's pivot from general advice to a truly inspiring real-world story. This is about an entrepreneur who navigated an unbelievably complex international path, not just to build a business, but to bring an entire culture back to life.
Meet Kasang Tashi. His story is just remarkable. I mean, from Tibet to Dartmouth College, then to a high-flying career in New York City banking. But he felt a different pull, this desire to go back to his roots and make a real, tangible impact.
So when Tashi went back to Tibet in 1986, this is what he found. It's just a shocking contrast. This ancient, honored art of rug making, famous for its incredible wool and master craftsmanship, it had been replaced by cheap polyester, awful dyes, and frankly, hideous rugs. The art was basically lost.
And this was his why. It was never just about business for him. It was a mission. He saw this beautiful tradition dying, and he felt a personal responsibility to fix it, to bring it back from the brink.
And his journey just shows this incredible perseverance. I mean, think about it. He started this back in the 80s, communicating with officials by telex. He'd have to wait a week just for a reply. But over the decades, he kept adapting, using email and design software to connect modern designers with those traditional weavers, slowly, piece by piece, rebuilding this lost art.
Tashi's story is absolutely epic, no doubt. But your own global journey doesn't have to start with some grand, decades-long quest. In fact, the best first step you can take is actually surprisingly simple.
So what is that simple first step? This might be the most practical, actionable piece of advice in this whole explainer. Just add French and Spanish to your product labels. That's it. Seriously. You've now officially started your global journey.
And why is this so powerful? Because it's a super low-cost action that immediately makes your product export-ready. All of a sudden, you're not just a local company anymore. You are prepared for opportunities in Mexico or Spain or, hey, even just the French-speaking parts of Canada. You have opened the door.
And that brings us right back to where we started. If 9 out of 10 of your potential customers live outside your country, the question really isn't if you should go global, it's how you're going to start. So what's that one small, totally achievable step you can take tomorrow to begin your own expedition?
If you want to build something that truly lasts, you have to be two things at once, a diplomat and a warrior. But wait, how can two complete opposites both be the key to success? Well, that's the paradox we're going to dig into today by looking at two very different stories that show the two essential faces of what it really takes to win.
Now, this isn't just some clever riddle. It's the puzzle at the very core of building anything meaningful. And the answer? It lies in mastering two totally different kinds of power. So to unpack this, we're going to go to two wildly different places, a small neighborhood shop and a massive corporate battlefield. Let's jump in.
All right, let's start with the first face of success. And you know what? It's all about the small stuff. We're talking about the incredible power of a simple human interaction. A skill that's so basic, so fundamental, that it's often completely ignored in the big, flashy pursuit of success.
Check out this powerful piece of advice from etiquette experts' side. This is about so much more than just being polite. It's really a strategic choice. A choice to see the actual person standing in front of you, not just a means to a transaction. It's about remembering there's humanity in business.
So why does this one simple act matter so much? Well, first off, it's a universal sign of respect pretty much anywhere you go in the world. And you have to remember,
A lot of small shops aren't these faceless corporations. They're family businesses. You've got partners, parents, kids, all pouring their entire lives into that little store. When you acknowledge them, you're recognizing all that hard work. Just saying hello when you walk in and goodbye when you leave, even if you bought nothing, is like a small deposit in the bank of human connection. It costs you absolutely nothing, but the goodwill it builds, that's priceless.
So, there it is. The first key is crystal clear. Respect the individual. See the person. Master those small, personal details. But that's only half the story. Now we're going to make a hard pivot, away from the quiet respect of a local shop to the loud, disruptive, all-out roar of an industry revolution.
And this brings us to our maverick, Herb Kelleher, and the absolutely unbelievable story of how Southwest Airlines began. See, this company wasn't dreamed up in some quiet, peaceful boardroom. No, it was forged in the fire of a full-blown legal war.
The whole idea was just shockingly simple. I mean, it was literally sketched out on a cocktail napkin. Kelleher and his partners had this super clear vision. Fly on time, charge the lowest fares possible, and make sure people actually have fun. That's it. A beautifully simple plan that was about to completely flip the stuffy, overpriced airline industry on its head.
But here's the thing, simple does not mean easy. The big established airlines looked at this brilliant idea and saw a massive threat. So what did they do? They didn't try to compete fairly. They took them to court. Southwest was immediately slammed with a firestorm of industry opposition, buried under a mountain of lawsuits and red tape, all designed to do one thing: kill the company before its first plane ever left the ground.
And that fight dragged on for 3 long years. Just try to imagine that. You have your dream, it gets approved, and then you have to spend the next 3 years of your life in court, just fighting for the right to even exist. I mean, that is some next-level perseverance.
The intensity of this whole thing was just staggering. So get this, in 1968, they get the green light from the Texas Aeronautics Commission. The very next day, their competitors get a court order to shut them down. It took until June 18, 1971, after a grueling 3-year legal war that burned through almost all of their money, for Southwest to finally get its first plane in the air.
And Herb Kelleher just summed up the culture this created perfectly. He said, in that kind of environment, you come together as a band of warriors. That constant battle for survival, it wasn't a problem, it became their identity. It forged them into this tight-knit team, completely united against a common enemy.
Okay, so we have these two totally different stories, right? On one side, the quiet respect you show a shopkeeper. On the other, the all-out war to launch an airline. So how on earth do these two opposing ideas come together to define what it means to be successful? Well, look at it this way. On one hand, you've got the shopkeeper's way, mastering the small things, focusing on one person at a time, building real human connection. And on the other hand, you've got the maverick's way, mastering the big picture, challenging the entire system, and fighting for a huge vision. Yeah, they seem like total opposites, but they're actually two essential sides of the exact same coin.
And right here, this is the heart of it all. True, lasting success isn't about picking one or the other. It's about having the wisdom to know when it's time to extend a respectful handshake and when it's time to draw your sword and get ready for a fight. It's about being both the diplomat and the warrior.
So, as we wrap up, I'll leave you with this question to think about. In your own life, your career, your business, which side of this coin do you need to work on right now? Is it time to really master the small details and those human connections? Or is it time to find your inner warrior and fight for that big vision? Definitely something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.